Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tracetainment. Thanks so much for tuning in with me. It's a pleasure to have you here. If you're new to the channel, do not forget to click the subscribe button so you don't miss none of the videos that I post. In today's video, RFK Jr. has made a massive announcement, and he explained the differences on how campaigning is now versus how it was previously. Check this video out.
Amongst our guests, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just getting dressed right now. He wants us to buy a little bit of money. Oh, he is dressed. All right. He also is an independent candidate, as you know. He's
show the audience.
Role with the Trump administration. Should there be a Trump 2 on Tuesday, and should we get a verdict actually on election night? That'll be great. So, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. So, I know you've lived a lot of your life in Washington, D.C. What did you make of the fact that the Washington Post announced inexplicably on Friday, we're not going to endorse a candidate?
I'm going to say this, when the Washington Post had made that post stating that they're not going to really endorse anyone, that post went crazy. I mean, like, any social media that I was on that day, I seen it everywhere. Like, that was something that was very big, and it affected a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I think it's great for everyone to make their own independent decision. You know, they do their research, they look at what policy is this, who has this policy, and see which policy fits better for them and their families, because that's what it comes down to, you know, is doing your research, looking at both candidates and showing, and then seeing what one candidate stands for, and then seeing what the other stands for, and then seeing which will be better for you and your family.
Jeff Bezos has come out and he said, you know what, we want people to decide on their own.
I agree with that.
The Washington Post, when I was little, did not endorse candidates, and it only started doing that recently. The problem I have with the Washington Post is the bias in the newsroom.
Front page.
Right, because traditionally you would have an unbiased reporting by the New York Times and the Washington Post, and then the editorial board would meet and vote, and they'd endorse a candidate, and there was supposed to be a Chinese wall between them. In recent years, they have become blatantly partisan, and I think that's a tragedy for the news, because there's really, you know, there is very, very few sources of nonpartisan news left, except, of course, right here.
All right, good answer.
How do you feel, though, about the media at large, though? Painting the Trump supporters that you were at that event in New York, at Madison Square Garden. They're painting them all as Nazi supporters, as racists. And this used to be your party. It used to be the part of inclusion, of open debate, but that's changed. Why?
Yeah, you know, at the beginning of this campaign, I made a statement about Anne Frank during a speech, and I wasn't referring to saying anything reminded me of Nazism. I was talking about the rise of totalitarian systems of AI and facial recognition that give totalitarian systems the capacity to...
I'm going to say this. At that MSG rally, Madison Square Garden rally, I seen a lot of people come together. There was a lot of people at that rally. It was more than I ever thought. That was the biggest rally, I'm going to say that. Certain things were mentioned, certain things were said. But at the end of the day, people were there to listen to what former President Donald Trump had to say and get a better understanding of who former President Donald Trump is if they didn't know already. You know, there are still people out there that are still undecided that want to hear, you know, what his policies are, how can we make people's lives better. And that's why they went to the rally. And then there was others that went to the rally to support former President Donald Trump. I think when certain comments are made, you know, that's where people start to get divided, because they look at it and be like, wow, why would they say that about that rally? Certain things shouldn't be mentioned at all, because we're not supposed to be divided. You know, we can share differences and still get along. That's what it's about, is sharing differences and still getting along, because everyone is going to believe in something that's different. You know, if we all believed in the same thing, things like this wouldn't be happening.
So much for our behavior to surveil us. And for about 5 months after that, I was called an anti-Semite for invoking the Nazi era. And here you have the leading Democrats in the last couple of weeks, and the press. MSNBC has been really appalling.
Insane.
And the vice president. And there's no link between, I don't even think Madison Square Garden existed in 1939.
Right. It came in 1968. It moved to Penn State.
Right. So they're invoking this 1939 meeting of Nazis, and they're saying that somehow this is a reunion. And you go in that You know, there was a joke made during the speech by one comedian, and the crowd, I was in the crowd at that time, and they groaned. These were not, you know, they were.
I'm gonna say that joke that was made by the comedian, it's for everybody to go look at. You know, it was shared everywhere online, so go take a look at it. You guys let me know your opinion down in the comment section on the joke that was made by the comedian, because some took it one way and some took it the other. You know, but at the end of the day, he is a comedian. I'm gonna say he's a comedian, but let me know when you guys listen to what he said down in the comment section.
No one was laughing.
Nobody was laughing, and there was so much joy in the room, and optimism, and patriotism, and idealism about our country, and it was the opposite of Nazism, and the need to use that most evocative and explosive and incendiary and poisonous reference, and it's being used across the top ranks of the Democratic Party. It's Hillary Clinton, it's Kamala. I think it's bad for our country. And by the way, so many of us, when we were kids in this country, were asked to consider the moral quandary. Would you, if you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler before he could do all the damage? And most of us answered, yeah, we would do that. So when you compare an American political figure to Hitler, who was about to become president, the kind of people who are already a little unstable, you're really kind of suggesting to them that this man should be killed before he gets into office.
President.
And that's when I say certain things that are mentioned should be mentioned at all, because people take them totally different than others do. And then there was already 2 assassination attempts from former President Donald Trump. You know, things like that shouldn't be happening at all. So certain things shouldn't be said, because when they do, some may take it differently than others, and we don't need any more things happening.
President Trump brought that up yesterday. He goes, you guys going to get me shot again. And he goes, when I was younger, my dad told me never bring up that word, Nazi, in my house. And now I'm being called it. And he said, you're going to get me shot again.
Right.
By the way, they did a study. They said how many people have a great deal, if not a fair amount of trust in the media. Only 31% said yes, they trust the media. That was at 40% in 2012, and it used to be over 70%.
When my uncle was president, it was 85%.
85%.
Wow.
When you had Walter Cronkite and people like that, and the media was really focused on
That's a
telling
big
the
difference.
truth to the American public.
When your uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Now it's 60, add a 0 to that.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about this. You walked in here and you gave everyone in the audience these Make America Healthy Again hats. As a mom, as Americans, we appreciate what you're doing, because we're getting older and we're thinking about...
Oh, yeah.
We want to live a long life. We want to see our grandchildren. I want to see my grandchildren walk down the aisle. You go to Europe and you might eat pizza in Italy and you don't feel bad and you don't gain weight. We want to know why that happens here in America and what you're going to do. But first, let's play the soundbite. This is Donald Trump at the rally at MSG.
Look, we're not going to let him go too crazy, Elon, with the oil and gas stuff. And, because Robert F. Kennedy cares more about human beings and health and the environment than anybody.
So former President Donald Trump said he's going to let RFK Jr. do it. You know, RFK Jr. said he's going to be making some big changes because he wants to make America healthy again. And just look at that. Just look at that. RFK Jr. could be doing anything else. He could be doing anything else right now. But he says he wants to make America healthy again. He is showing that he really cares about the people's health. He wants to make some big changes because there's a difference on how things are now versus how things were back then. As you guys just heard the numbers, there's a big difference between the two. And that is crazy.
And he's going to be absolutely, having him is such a great honor. I've been friends of his for a long time. And I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines. The only thing I don't think I'm going to let him even get near is the liquid gold that we have under our feet.
He's always funny, man.
Well, he always says that, and I get it. But what he's right is, we have the sickest children in the world right now. There's nobody in the world that has that. And when I was a kid, the autism rate among American children and in 70-year-old men today, in my generation, is 1 in 10,000. In my children's generation, it's 1 in every 34 kids, 1 in every 22 boys.
Wow.
And the diabetes, a typical physician when I was a kid would see 1 case of juvenile diabetes in his lifetime, or a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walk through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And it's costing us $4.3 trillion a year. It costs we paid 0 for chronic disease when my uncle was president. Today it's the biggest expense, 5 times our military budget. It's easy to fix. We have 1,000 ingredients in our foods that are illegal in Italy and other countries in Europe. And the reason for that is corruption. At the food industry and the agriculture, big agricultural producers control FDA. And so they're not worried about public health. They're worried about advancing the mercantile interests of those corporations, and they've let them do things. You know, the companies, the big cereal companies, make 2 kinds of cereals. Like Fruit Loops in our country is just loaded with chemicals and food dyes that are carcinogenic, that they're going to cause ADHD in your kids. If you go across the border to Canada or to Europe, you have the same product, but it has no dyes in it. Right. It has good ingredients. So these companies know how to do it.
Wow, so as you guys can see, it looks like the Trump team has some big changes that they want to be made. And just look at how things were back then and look how things are going now, because there's a big difference between the two, especially with the security and the economy. You know, we got to get the economy back to where we used to be, because right now a lot of people are struggling, and it's sad to see a lot of people struggling. You know, they're trying to best to make ends meet. And the security, I don't even want to get into that, you know, because crimes are happening to innocent people in places that they shouldn't be happening at all. You know, no crime should be happening anywhere. I just wish we can all get along. You know, we're going to have differences at the end of the day. I wish we can all just get along and live our beautiful lives. But let me know what you guys think about today's video in the comment section. That'll be a wrap for today's video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.